Hey everybody, this is Perch, and a number of people have been waiting to see Milestone return. And Milestone's got a kind of a weird and clunky history. And what I mean by clunky, I just mean there's been a lot of starts and stops. For people who read Milestone comics in the 90s, there were some pretty incredible books out there. In fact, for that time period, if you happen to be in comics, reading comics during that time, you probably have really, really fond memories of kind of Milestone media and the characters were created there, some of the experiences. I mean, there was some very forward thinking stuff. I don't not people often use the word progressive, but that's kind of the wrong. I think that's too limiting. Really, they were putting out ideas and concepts that were years ahead of their time for comics. However, they also had, I think, the unfortunate situation of kind of getting kicked off right in the height of the comic speculator boom and bust. And what happened there is that it basically suffered the same fate as everything else, kind of in the mid '90s. And by 1997, Milestone shut down the division, and series. There were comics that were just discontinued mid story. And not to put a pin in that for later, but as we're talking about the revival, which we will in a moment, the reader in me would really like them to go back and kind of continue those stories rather than reboot it. But I get it. I understand. They did many years later, about 15 years later. This is probably about 2011, maybe a little bit earlier than that. DC put out a limited series called Milestone Forever. But unfortunately, while it did kind of answer some of the questions, it also was dramatically under marketed. You could blink and you missed it, and that was really kind of the problem with how DC would treat Milestone. Many people got exhausted by the idea of DC and Dan Didio in particular. I think there was this running joke at the Comic Cons that Milestone is coming back, which dates from like 2007. There were all these statements that any day now we're bringing them into the universe proper, and they're gonna be there. And then they would do kind of very strange insertions. Static, who of course did have the TV appearances, came in very briefly when they were doing the New 52, but it was canceled almost immediately. Like that was one of the quickest canceled books they had, and so then. They continued to bump along. There was talk of relaunching around 2015. Reginald Hudlin was discussing doing it. Dennis Cohen, Derek Dingle were meant to be involved. And then DC Comics created Earth M, which in their multiverse to kind of highlight that, hey, maybe we are going to do something. It was not. It felt like bait at that point. People saw Earth M, and they may have gotten excited about that, but then nothing happened, and there was no tease of anything. So then, as I'm walking through this in 2018, I think there was meant to be Milestone's return, but it did not actually occur. And there were lawsuits, and then of course Dwayne McDuffie passed away, and so then there was some question about ownership, and it just continued to be a mess, which is a shame because if you go all the way back to the beginning, there were some pretty great concepts again being put out. Zombie was a pretty awesome book. Shadow Cabinet, Cobalt, I like Blood Syndicate. There are just a lot of really cool books, and it had the misfortune of being launched in a time where it never was able to really get up the steam it needed to kind of survive that implosion that happened in comics. And then because of mixed ownership and everything else, it just struggled. But basically, that is a cheap and terrible 4-minute description of everything to happen to Milestone, because it is there's a lot more to it. And I am doing not only a longer video, but I'll do a full retrospective. I've got some guests who want to come in and talk about it, their experiences. So we'll give you a full detail, because what I just told you is like the too long didn't read version of it. Started in the early 90s. It got caught up in the comic book speculator bust. It then attempted to come back several times and never really did. DC would kind of flirt with using it. They'd reference a character or something in the title, but then they would never really go through with it. And they struggled and struggled and struggled. And now here we are. It's 2021. Last year we got kind of this, again, I don't think they meant it this way, but Milestone returns issue 0, which was, again, almost a blink if you miss it kind of thing. Once again, why they would relaunch that right in the midst of comics getting back on their feet after the brief pandemic shutdown, and they're in the middle of death metal, a lot of questions about DC's future and everything else. So this book just came and went. But we are finally getting more Milestone. So there is they're expanding the comic. They're kind of doing a redo of the comic that came out last September, and they have new story pages and everything else. And they've got promotion that on that these comics are going to start coming out digitally in April. With the idea that Milestone will then do the same, kind of out for 2 months digitally and then ultimately printed. It's slightly ominous, I will just say. I don't want to. This isn't me, putting in some speculation about anything, but it's slightly ominous that the launch of this again seems to be kind of shoved in the side. I'm worried that this is another attempt, but this may just be my frustration over how this has been handled in the past. But we have 3 comics that they've done house ads for: Icon and Rocket, Static, and Hardware, and presumably more. That there will be more more to come. Now, some of the comments indicate that it's going to be about publishing new books, but also celebrating its history. That's okay. Its history should be celebrated, but I am hoping it's more along the lines of new comics. If it's just celebrating the history, I'd like to know, what we don't know is, are these truly ongoing series or not? They're listed as, the first of Static is a 6-issue miniseries. Are the others a mini-series? You kind of get the feeling like they might be, but you're not sure. So let's go through the creative teams really quickly. Icon and Rocket comes out in June of 2021. It's Reginald Hudlin, Leon Chills, art by Doug Braithwaite. Cool, that's coming in June, and that's a lot of the original team. We love that. We have Static, which is coming out, as I mentioned, in April. This will be written by Vita Ayala, who's new to Milestone, with art by Chris Cross, Nicholas Draper-Ivy. They're using some cover artists that are reminiscent of kind of the original launch. Finally, Hardware is a 3rd issue, and that is coming in August, I believe. Yes, it's coming in August, and that's a creative team of Brandon Thomas, Dennis Cohen, Bill Sienkiewicz, sorry, and then some covers by Mateus Mahani. And that's cool. I'm butchering some names, and I apologize. Cool. I like I said, I'm a fan of Milestone. I think there's some very good comics out there. There's some very neat ideas. It's continued to be a struggle. One thing to kind of keep in mind about the original Milestone is absolutely Milestone was kind of founded and created with the kind of published intent that the founders believe that minorities were underrepresented in American comics. They wish to address it by giving some more opportunities to people, and that's definitely true in the kind of the foundation of this imprint and this company. But also true is that the comics they were attempting to make were meant to blow the doors off. The comics were not they were not supposed to address current minority topics. They were meant to be powerful, knock it out of the park topics. They were meant to, basically create a new universe. And at least from the September issue, it was far more rooted in current, current headline stuff, current protests, current issues. And that's, I don't know if I'm describing this in the best way, but that was there in the original Milestone, but not at the same time. There was really a focus on just creating a mythology for these characters. And I hope that, if this is a celebration of Milestone, that it actually takes that spirit of Milestone, and it doesn't just become a, hey, let's insert some heroes into today's current, political climate and call it a day. I think, don't forget that, Don't forget that Static Shock. Don't forget that these books. Icon is a cool character. Hardware is a cool character. Where is Zombie? Like, these are cool characters with cool concepts, and if it's completely tied to current politics, current themes of the day, not only does that kind of put a shelf life on the comic, I think it also it undermines a lot of the coolness of what Milestone is. So hopefully that's what we get. My opinion anyway. Are you looking forward to Milestone? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. Give me your memories if you read these books, anything else. We could speculate as much as we want, but I'd prefer let's stick to, you can do whatever you want, of course, but what is it that you would be looking forward to? What would you like? And have you never heard of Milestone and you're kind of curious about it? If so, I would strongly recommend go seek out the 90s issues, and rather than just jump into the new issues, go find out the source, because a lot of really cool work there, and you owe it to yourself to check in on that history. Like I said, there'll be a much longer video really going through all the details, because I skimmed over 90% of them in this quick update. But wanted to talk about the creative teams, what's happening, and give you that input. Thanks for listening.